The April 22nd Fountain City Council meeting to order. Please stand if able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Roll Call, Clerk. Did I say that backwards?
Madam Roll Call, Clerk.
Shall we try that one again?
Sure.
All right.
Mayor Thompson,
Here, I guess.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick,
Here.
Councilmember Geek, Councilmember Hinton, Councilmember Estes,
Here.
Councilmember Duncan,
Present.
Councilmember Hirschberg is joining us virtually. Do you see her, Chris? Yes. Is she unmuted? Can you unmute her? We could hear her, please.
I'm here.
I have 6 present. Councilmember Hinton notified staff previous to the meeting that he wouldn't be here today.
Oh, he's not coming at all?
He won't be here this evening, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. All righty. Okay, so, on to item 4.1, and just want to remind everybody, after public to be heard, we are taking a recess. We're not quite sure when that'll be, but for about 40 minutes, so that we can head on over to the fire department for their autism night. So, we are on to item 4.1, presentations, proclamation recognizing Hello? Okay, recognizing National Small Business Week. Ms. Bailey.
Evening, Mayor, Council, Public. Thank you for a brief few minutes. Upcoming next week is Small Business Week. It's very important to support our entrepreneurs. And with us, we have Laura Shakes with us from the SBDC that the proclamation is on behalf of. So I'll let her address you for a few minutes.
Good evening. I certainly don't want to be the thing that stands between you and Autism Night, so I will make this very quick. But I do thank you all for being here tonight. As Kimberly said, my name is Lauren Shakes, and I have the honor of serving as the Associate Director at the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and a heartfelt thank you for recognizing and proclaiming May 5th through the 9th as National Small Business Week in the Pikes Peak region. Our Small Business Week means so much, not only to our local entrepreneurs, but to the community that they support. At its core, Small Business Week is a time to recognize and celebrate the hardworking individuals who are the backbone of our local economy, our small businesses. These are the dreamers, the doers, the risk takers, those who pour their hearts into their work, open their doors early, stay open late, do their paperwork even later at night, and wear a million different hats to get the job done. They create jobs, support local causes, invest in our city, and shape the unique character of our neighborhood. They're more than just business owners, they're our community builders. Our small businesses are what make the Pikes Peak region the vibrant, dynamic region that we're proud to call home. And to all of our small business owners in this region, I say thank you. Do we have any small business owners in the room? Thank you, Deetra. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your dedication, your resilience, and your contribution to making Fountain and the greater Pikes Peak region a better place to live, work, and play. Your impact is felt every day, from the smiles you bring to your customers to the examples you set for our future entrepreneurs. While they aren't able to join me here tonight, I'd like to extend a quick thanks to our partners who help make Small Business Week possible. Small Business Week is co-hosted by the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC and the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado. Their leadership, collaboration, and commitment to supporting small businesses year-round was able to make this week a phenomenal week, and we are still proud to hold the title of the largest Small Business Week celebration in the state of Colorado and in the United States. We invite everyone to join us to partake in some activity of Small Business Week. We have an event every day from May 5th to May 9th. We have an awards ceremony recognizing small business owners in 5 different categories. We have a networking happy hour, and we have workshops to help our small businesses grow and make their processes more efficient. I'm pretty certain we have something for everyone. So if you're not interested in learning about AI, please join us for a happy hour to congratulate all the small businesses, both here in Fountain and in the greater Colorado Springs, El Paso County region with us. Thank you for the opportunity to shed light on the small businesses that give Fountain and our region the energy, identity, and its future. Thank you for the proclamation, and I promise that is all I have to say, and you guys are on your way to Autism Night.
Thank you very much. And in just a second, Councilmember Estes is going to read the proclamation into the record. But if you want to do something for Small Business Week, I have a broom and a mop and some weed sprayer and any of that kind of stuff. I'm more than happy to have you come help a small business out. So, yeah. I'll sign you up. Let me know when you're coming. All right. Okay, Councilmember Estes.
Proclamation recognizing National Small Business Week. Whereas National Small Business Week recognizes the many contributions of America's entrepreneurs and small business owners who create opportunities for families, workers, and neighbors, driving local and national economic growth. And whereas small businesses are the backbone of the economy and the guardians of the free market, representing 99.5% of all businesses in Colorado and providing nearly 47.6% of the state's workforce. And whereas small businesses in the city of Fountain play a vital role in fostering economic prosperity, job creation, and community development, making this city a thriving place to live, work, and do business. And whereas the Pikes Peak Small Business Development Center exists to help existing and new businesses grow and prosper by providing free one-on-one consulting, low-cost educational seminars, and events to support business success in Fountain and throughout the region. And whereas the Better Business Bureau of Southern Colorado has worked to advance marketplace trust by setting ethical business standards, providing consumer education and business resources, and supporting local enterprises. And whereas the Fountain Economic Development Corporation, Fountain EDC, is committed to strengthening the local businesses environment by supporting small businesses, promoting economic growth, and providing resources to foster entrepreneurship and innovation in the city of Fountain. And whereas the Colorado Springs Chamber and Economic Development Corporation serves as a regional leader in fostering a strong economic climate, advocating for businesses, and supporting entrepreneurs through resources, partnerships, and workplace development initiatives. And whereas small businesses in Fountain have demonstrated remarkable resilience, overcoming challenges such as economic fluctuations, workforce shortages, and supply chain disruptions, all while remaining committed to serving the local community. And whereas without the individuals who take risks to start and sustain small businesses, and without the local resources dedicated to supporting their growth, a significant portion of our city's and nation's economy would be diminished and unable to function. And whereas the SBDC, BBB, and the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC are hosting for the 17th year special events from May 5th through May 9th, 2025, across the Pikes Peak region, giving business owners an opportunity to gain insights into business development, marketing, economic trends, and employee retention strategies through workshops and the Small Business Week Award celebration. And whereas the Small Business Week at the Pikes Peak region continues to be the largest celebration of small businesses throughout Colorado and one of the most significant in the United States. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Fountain, Colorado hereby proclaims May 5th to the May 9th, 2025 as National Small Business Week. Done this 22nd day of April 2025.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So go support a small business, right?
Yes.
Right.
Shop and dine local.
Yeah, and great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, that takes us on to correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Just everybody kind of go down the row? Nope.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The only thing I would mention is to keep on your radar, and we've got some handouts in the back about our upcoming town hall event to discuss wildfire mitigation and dangers, and give an opportunity to answer questions from the public and provide information on things they can do to make their residences more fire safe. That is on May 8th from 6 to 8 in this room, and we'll have representatives from many of the city departments, including obviously fire, police, public works, water, I think Mr. Trainer's going to be here for that, so a nice panel to be able to answer questions and provide information specifically regarding wildfire risk and wildfire mitigation. That is all.
Joni, can we get a copy of this flyer? I know I have an electronic copy, and so does Jared, but can we get it sent to the council, please? So they can
course.
share with people that they'd like?
Of course.
Thank you. PD? Oh, come on, it's your big night. All right. City Clerk?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay, IT? Okay, we'll start in the room, and then we'll go to Councilmember Hurstberg. Councilmember Rick? Councilmember Geek?
Yeah, I have a couple things.
Can you turn your mic on?
That,
There you go.
I just wanted to say that I met with planning, Scott, Joni, and some others, and I was so impressed, really impressed with all Christy and her planning staff know and are doing to keep things moving. I met with Elise Bergeston from the Cross Creek Metro District regarding the Hill Reservoir and some other things. And I had an opportunity to call Neighborhood Services this last week about a fallen tree on Peaceful Valley Road. And within an hour, cones were out marking where, so that people would go around the broken part. And by the next morning, that tree was gone. I was just absolutely astounded. So good job. Whoever that is, it's just good job.
Thank you.
I just want to give a shout out to the fire department and Parks and Electric. The mayor and I were able to go yesterday to look at the fire mitigation efforts that were happening in Hibbard Park. Impressive, and it was wonderful seeing all of those guys out there working together. You know, it's great to see it. I know some aren't real happy with it, but it is so appreciated by our community that that work is being done. So thank you very much.
And in considering how hard you were working, you're moving really well. All right, Councilmember Duncan?
Thank you. Just wanted to say that I had a chance to take a tour of the Springs Rescue Mission, and this is one of their brochures. And I was really impressed about the wraparound services that they have. One of the concerns that I had voiced that I hear out in the community is that the unhoused, they have to leave at 6 a.m. And I got to tour the facility, and at 6 a.m. they have a chance to eat breakfast, they have a chance to do their laundry, they have a chance to participate in all types of wraparound services, as in carpentry work. They have nurses that come in and give care. They have a culinary experience that they can take part in. So there's a lot that's going on at the rescue mission. So if you are looking for somewhere to volunteer or give back to the community, I was really impressed. They have a courtyard inside, and it looks like you're at a college campus. It is very well kept. The people that live at the rescue mission or visit there, or they have jobs there, they help keep it clean. So it's not like they're there and they're not doing anything. They keep it clean. They keep the trash, the litter, all of that stuff. I was really impressed. So for those that think that they're just put out on the street at 6 o'clock in the morning, that's not true. They have a community room. They get to watch the news and all those types of things. And also, they have transportation to take them to different interviews. And I did learn a lot of people that are living at the rescue mission are transitioning. They have a job. They just don't have enough money to get a place. So a lot of people I saw were those people sleep at night, and then when it's cold, we get scared about what was happening to people out on the street. Then when the temperatures are really low, and they turn all areas into places where they have over 600 people on those nights. So I was really happy to hear about that. So shout out to the rescue mission. And today is Earth Day. And Tamara, help me with this one. We have community cleanup coming up.
Yes.
And so I'm a community, I'm a captain this time. So anybody that wants to help me, please sign up. I don't want to be out there by myself, so just let me know. And also, it is in June 25th is Bike to Work Day. So this is something that I wanted to say to the city that, we can get out and practice. And I'd like to have some type of, talk to our, to Todd and to Scott about what can we do for our employees that ride their bikes to work. I know we got some good bike riders out here, and also being able to do some type of breakfast for them on that morning. But it's June 25th. And my last thing is that I learned, and you probably heard on the news, that right here in our backyard in Colorado Springs Airport, that I'm excited about, they have international, it's becoming an international airport. So starting on June the 7th, we can fly right here in Colorado Springs and travel to Cancun. So that's all I have.
All right. Deecha, if you haven't read it, the previous director of Springs Rescue Mission, Jack Briggs, has a book out. It's very, very worthwhile and really, really good. So you might want to, I don't know if the library has it or not, but it's a really good book because, yeah, that place is absolutely astounding when you tour there. And I remember as a teenager, our youth pastor taking us into Los Angeles to serve a meal at the rescue mission there. And so when I toured the rescue mission here, I was expecting it to be very similar to what I had done there, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. It was the quality of work they've done there and how clean it is, and like you were saying, yes, it's beautiful. So, gosh, it seems like everything happens always in the first couple of weeks. I want to congratulate John Trilch. He was elected to the Military Affairs Council. I believe he's the first person from the city of Fountain ever elected to serve on that board, and so hats off to him for being able to get in there and help the city be recognized more. Memorial Day is coming up. It is May 26th this year. Have pancake breakfast from 7 to 10, and then 11 o'clock ceremony at the VFW, and then they will serve lunch right afterwards. So, and they always do a great ceremony. So that is coming up. I had a town hall with Senator Snyder, and a couple of council members stopped by too. A lot of great questions from people in the audience, and so some follow-up with some of their questions. Having another town hall meeting on May 3rd. So you can come to my town hall meeting from 9 to 10 and then go join Councilmember Duncan on her cleanup day and and just do everything in one day. And then we're also having John Hall come from CDOT, and he's going to talk about what they're going to do with the bridge over here at exit 128, the long-term plan for that. And so that'll be nice to hear from him. I attended a town hall meeting and VIP reception with Senator Hickenlooper when he was in town last week. I did extend an invitation for him and his staff to tour the rail yard project, and if they're in town, we can also fit in to tour the PFAS facility that we have here also. So hopefully we'll get a follow-up to them, and hopefully that will happen. PPACG expanded the Metro Planning Organization boundaries called the MPO, and that's really important because when they expanded them, it included the rail yard project into the MPO area, and that when that project gets going, that qualifies them for a whole different pot of funds for them to possibly be able to dip into. May 5 through 9 is a busy week. It's also Air Quality Awareness Week, and we all deserve clean air and water. But just one thing that the reason it's super important to stay in air quality attainment is if you go out of attainment, it triggers additional requirements for 20 years. And then it's really hard to get out of attainment. So they're trying to get a new monitor put down at the Pueblo West area to monitor the air and get more accurate air readings down in our area. And that's one reason that we do the free bus rides in the summer, right? Is to hopefully, so mom and dad aren't running those kids around everywhere, they can hop on the bus and help with the air quality. I attended the Tobacco Alliance meeting today, and the D8 kids did a fantastic presentation on what they're doing with vaping. at D8 with their youth council, and I contacted Joni to see if they can come give it to council. They've even made their own little commercial, little PSA, so help them get that out. Fascinating. 90% of the people that smoke began before the age of 18. I thought that was, so that's why they're trying to even take their message down to middle schools as much. And the community that care went to their meeting, and they're reviewing their annual goals and their progress. PPACG Senior Leadership Project for a wildland fire study that they're doing in regards to flooding in the area if the Air Force Academy were to have an event. And, oh gosh, we have a swag bag from Diversus Health. Diversus Health now has a new office across the street from Security Fire Station Number 1, so that we now have services locally, and I'm super excited about that. And if you're interested, Pikes Peak Area Council of Government, the Area on Aging, has podcasts called Aging with Altitude. And they're really interesting podcasts on a variety of topics of not just the seniors, but if you're helping take care of senior and need some assistance there too. And the Old Town Steering Committee met, and one of the things they decided to do, if they, I want to make sure you guys all know they have a Facebook page. It's kind of a long name. It's the Old Town Fountain Small Brick and Mortar Business Hub and Happenings. But they posted a map on there today of lists all the businesses that are in the Old Town Fountain area so that you can hopefully patronize them during Small Business Week. And we had 100 first graders, I think they were, from Patriot Elementary in here. They wanted to tour the library, and PD and fire department brought all their equipment over here, and the kids got to play on it and everything. And I was supposed to address them, but 100 first graders, they weren't really interested, you know, so I went around and just talked to a few of them. And then after they left, I called facilities and had them come over because they left all sorts of little crumbs, but it was great to see 100 kids in here. And shout out to the egg hunt that Bryce O'Brien and her team did. They said they had 1,300 kids registered, pre-registered for that egg hunt. So they did a fantastic job over there, and thank them for doing that for our community. Okay, that takes us on to, oh, Jennifer, did you want to say anything tonight that you've been up to?
There's nothing for me, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us on to public to be heard. Citizens may address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Council may not be able to provide an immediate answer, but will direct staff to follow up. Out of respect for the council and others in attendance, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. And the first card I have is from Heidi Bealey? Okay. And on child and family specialist.
Good evening. I'm Heidi Yilly, and I'm actually here to represent some of those.
Middle button.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
I'm Heidi Yilly, and I'm here to represent some of those small businesses that were mentioned earlier. So Palomay Child and Family Specialist is a small business. We have an office in Colorado Springs and Woodland Park, and we're soon to have one here. The other small business, which is a 501c3, is the Edge Teen Center. And so this is a strategic partnership with a for-profit and nonprofit. But we're really just excited to tell you who we are, what we're about. It's taken a village to get this far. We started this journey last summer, and it'll be almost a year till we open up the doors. We're looking at May 9th as a tentative open date. I will make sure that you all have information on that open date, and we ask you all to come and join us for that open house to see who we are, what we do, and what we're here to do to help support the children and families here in the Fountain Valley area. Really, and I know I'll miss some things, so I'm gonna try not to. But ideally, we have Palomay Child and Family Specialists as the mental health and substance use provider. And we have a holistic approach, and part of that approach is to support the teens and offer the Edge Teen Center for a safe place for kids to come, hang out, spend time, to connect, not with their phone, not with their iPad, but with each other. And so we're here to help support and put our arms around these families, these kids, and just in time for school to get out. So they have some place that's fun and safe to hang out through the summer. We do offer we offer a lot of structure, which we know our kids need nowadays. And so it's taken a village to get this far. We're here to be more support and expand that village. And we look forward to any other opportunities or support we have. We holistically look at community service for our kids to get out and give back. We do that all at both of our locations and we'll continue to do so. I'm also a part of Fountain Valley Kiwanis, and so they are all about kids as well. And so we intend to have a really strong partnership there as well as other youth serving opportunities here in the community. So I have on and off throughout the last 10 years been involved with Fountain Valley in different ways and look forward to continuing to do that. Oh, we're on the bus line, so there's a good thing. Just trying to remember all the things. But from a Pella May Child and Family Specialist standpoint, we offer individual family therapy, so services from ages 2 to whenever. But individual family therapy, advocacy mentoring, supervised visits. We work very closely with DHS to help support them in those services that they need. But the idea is when kids come in, we recognize the needs. We understand that kids have a lot of trauma. And so we're here to help them from both sides, not just a safe place for them to come and spend time with each other and safe, trusted adults, but also to provide those services they need to help them be good serving citizens when they become adults and go out on their own in the world. So, and I know I messed some things, so, but I'll be back. This won't be the last time you see me.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to know you guys recognize you are really close to that bus stop right on the south end of that whole
Yes.
place right there.
Yes.
Down by Lucial's.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, yeah, that'll be great. And then the free bus starts end of May?
Yes, through the summer.
Okay, yeah. All right, perfect, thank you, good timing.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We look forward to the ribbon cutting. You said May 9th?
That's our
Tentatively?
tentative date, yes.
Okay.
But I will make sure you have exact date and time, and please, anybody, come and celebrate with us. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting, thank you. All right, the last card I have is from Bob Dodson. Misuse of city equipment. Please come down and state your name for the record and push the center button there.
Hi, my name is Bob Dotson, and I want to talk about April the 17th at about 7:30 in the morning when we got 2 Fountain City sanitation truck employees using a city sanitation trucks, getting a motorcycle. So if we didn't start a new service, I'm hoping we did, and they can take the money from that and put it back in lowering our water bill. But that sure is waste of city equipment, and of course the people we're paying. And I surely don't think that is right. If we're going to do the service for somebody, we need to do it for the whole city.
So you, just to clarify, you said a fountain sanitation?
2.
No.
Yes, ma'am.
You said fountain sanitation.
Yes, ma'am. It had
Okay,
the fountain sanitation.
is not run by the city of Fountain.
It isn't.
No, and I wish years ago, 100 years ago, they had not named it the same thing, right? Fountain Sanitation is its own sanitation district, and Todd can get you the contact information
I would
for them.
appreciate that, because if they're doing that, I mean,
If it was our city employees, though, if it was a fountain truck, we'd sure want to know about
right,
it.
and
And-
just my thought was
Yeah.
because it says city fountain sanitation.
I know, it's very confusing. It's very, very confusing.
Well, I'm glad you
And
clarified
the water rates are set by the city of Fountain, but not Fountain Sanitation.
No,
right?
I would assume that they were together, but okay,
I
good
get
point.
it. I did too when we first moved here too. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear what you said.
I said, I'm glad that it's not the same and that they're not
Yes.
our employees.
Right. But if ours ever do, you let us know.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I'll
All
tell
right.
on them.
Yeah, but Todd will get you Fountain Sanitation.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And-
Thank you, and that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in
Yes,
and
ma'am.
talking to us tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, that is all we have from public to be heard. So we are going to take a 40-minute break. And if you're online, that means we will be back live at 7:10. And I am putting us into recess until 7:10. We are going over to the Fountain fire department and participate in Autism Awareness Night, and if they want, if council members want. Otherwise, we will see you back then. All right. 7:10. We are coming out of recess after visiting the Autism Awareness Evening over at the fire department. Thank you very much for putting that on and for letting me play with the fire hose over there and put the fire out in the fake buildings. So thank you very much. All righty, and that takes us on. And is Councilmember Hersberg back online? Oh, don't you dare.
After all this council, you do put out a fire once in a while.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. Is Councilmember Hersberg back online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, didn't want to miss you if you were there. Okay, we are through with public to be heard, so that takes us on a consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be approved with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately at the discretion of council. We have items 7A and B. What would council like to do with the consent agenda? Councilmember Geek?
I just noticed that on page 2, my name is misspelled.
Oh,
On page 2.
I will correct that.
Okay.
Thank you, Joni.
You know, you have to like uncorrect the auto spell correct on that word I've discovered. Yeah, okay. All right, so that would be,
Deidre Duncan, I will approval of the consent agenda with the one correction.
Councilmember Geek?
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Councilmember Hersberg, how do you vote?
Yes.
I have 6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, that takes us on to item 8, old business. There is none tonight. Item 9, new business. A, considerations of item removed from the consent agenda. There were no items removed. Item 9B, discussion on implementation of land use regulations for ancillary dwelling units for compliance with Colorado legislation adoption of House Bill 24-1152. Ms. Martinez.
Good evening, Christy Martinez with the City of Fountain Planning Department. Tonight's discussion is regarding compliance with the House Bill 24-1152, which mandates that all municipalities allow accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and I'm putting that acronym out there early because I will be saying it a lot, in all zone districts that allow single-family detached units. And the slide doesn't want to change. So the House bill, which was passed last year, mandates that all municipalities amend our regulations to allow the ADUs in all single-family residential zone districts, and that all needs to be in place by June 30th of 2025. It would also apply to zone districts that are zoned PUDs. So a planned unit development is a customized zone district that is established with the developer that didn't typically fit into the norms of a conventional zone district, and they can write in different stipulations. The state statute does not recognize any of that and would also allow for the accessory dwelling units in the zone district. The bill also stipulates that all of the ADU applications would need to be processed administratively, which means that a governing body cannot have any public hearings, any additional scrutiny, reviews to that. It would all have to be done administratively. The statute does outline various standards that would need to come into compliance for the ADUs, such as setbacks, minimum sizes, parking requirements, and owner occupancy requirements. Next slide.
Any questions on that page so far? Because we're going to get a lot of information tonight.
And I'm going to stop at each slide just so everybody
Okay.
knows I'm not going to do my typical rush through it all and then go back through
Okay.
it. I will rush. I will go through it at a swift pace.
Administratively, Christy, means your office.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
It
okay.
is a staff level approval. It wouldn't go through a planning commission, city council, board of county commissioner, variance, board of adjustment, or hearing officer process, depending on the jurisdictional boards.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So there are various types of ADUs. So ADUs can be added on as an addition to either the front, back, or side of the primary unit. They could be located in a basement or a separate story, or they can be detached, which can go along to the front, side, or rear of the lot. They can convert an attached garage to living space. They could build a secondary structure. There's various ways in which an ADU can be applied. They generally fall into one of three categories, which are either a detached, where it's completely separated from the primary unit, attached, where it's clearly attached to the existing unit, or it could be integrated, which means that they are adding an addition, finishing a basement, adding a second story of some sorts. Are there any questions on what an ADU is? Okay, next slide. I kind of just summarized all of that, of how ADUs are applied. An ADU would provide independent living facilities, including but not limited to sleeping, cooking, sleeping facilities, sanitation, based upon the legal discussions amongst various attorneys throughout the state of Colorado. If partial facilities are present, then it constitutes an ADU. We'll see a lot of folks want to try to circumvent those regulations and say we're putting a kitchen sink, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, everything in there, living space, sleeping space, bathrooms. But they're saying we're not going to put in a oven or a stove, but you can use a cooktop. Well, the intent there is to provide a separate and independent living facility, and therefore it would be an accessory dwelling unit. All of the ADUs, because they are to be completely separate, independent, and distinct from the primary unit, would need to have independent access from the primary residence. So you couldn't walk through the front door to a living room to get to, say, a basement stairwell to go up or down. Basement stairwell to go down to an ADU, a separate stairwell to go up. It would have to have a separate egress, which may require the closure of interior stairwells or the addition of stairwells. Access can also be provided exterior to the unit, so they would have to provide a separate egress outside of the unit where they are not accessing the primary unit. So think of it as not my son or daughter is going to move in, I'm going to put them in the basement. It's a completely separate dwelling unit, whether it stays with a family member, whether it's rented out, whether both units are rented out. It's completely separate and distinct. Next slide. So locally within the city, the zone districts that this would apply to would be the large lot residential agricultural district, the residential agricultural district, the R1 district, RMU, which is the residential mixed use, which is primarily near the downtown area, multifamily, the manufactured housing park and manufactured housing subdivision, the central downtown mixed use district, and PUDs. There is an asterisk next to the CMU zone district because a single family detached unit is allowed with a conditional use written into the code, and therefore if somebody in that zone district wanted to add an ADU, that would also go through a conditional use. So we are still allowing it, but because the single family is allowed as a conditional use, the ADU would follow that same process. Within the statute, it does stipulate that homeowners associations cannot prohibit ADUs. Please keep in mind that municipalities do not enforce HOA regulations or governance, but it is written into it that they can't not allow them. Again, the statute does require the administrative approval, and you can't add any other subjective standards. So you can't stipulate that the ADU is consistent with the surrounding area, aesthetics, or any type of an architectural design. So windows, roof pitches, things like that. Next slide. Within the statute, it does have some development standards that require municipalities to allow all ADUs between the minimum of 500 and 750 square feet. However, governmental entities can establish a maximum size. The all ADUs would follow the same building standards for an accessory building. So if somebody wanted to build a shed in their backyard, they would follow those same structural setbacks for any other type of an accessory structure. It can't be regulated because it's a separate ADU. However, municipalities can regulate the height. And we also can't require any greater design standards. So as I mentioned, different types of building materials, locations of windows, quantity of windows, different roof pitches, the aesthetic part of it. For the parking requirements, the city can allow an ADU parking requirements if there are no assigned parking. However, there is the stipulation that if there's already parking for the residential unit and our codes require parking for the primary unit, in which case we do, that we can assign a parking space to that ADU. Otherwise, we can't require any additional parking spaces beyond what the code would already allow for a primary residence. For occupancy limits, the statute stipulates that we cannot require that the property owner resides either in the primary unit or the ADU. We also can't stipulate the number of people who may live together in either of those units, and that was a completely separate House bill unrelated to this one. So we can't say the ADU has to be owner occupied, we can't say the primary unit can be owner occupied, we can't say that the accessory dwelling unit is limited to X number of people related by blood, marriage, or relationship, so we get out of any type of familial relationship with that House bill. Are there any questions on that?
This is a lot of information.
It is absolutely a lot of information. A
So-
lot of it is what we can't do.
Is this slide showing on our YouTube page so that our citizens can see this? Yes. Okay, because this is coming down from the state.
It's on the page of the notes from the next meeting.
Okay,
I've already read it.
okay. It's a lot of information, but this is coming down from the state.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any questions
So
on
if
this
we
section?
have a one-car parking requirement for a house, and we can't require any additional parking for them, how do they share a one-car parking spot?
That is not for the city to determine that. If there is on-street parking, they can park on-street, in the front yard. Yeah, there's no regulation in terms of who that parking space is allowed to be designated for.
And if it's a two-bedroom, one-bath house that most people would think normally 2.5 people are going to live in, and we can't monitor how many people live in a home,
Apartments, they average 2 to 2.5 vehicles per apartment.
can you say that on the,
On apartments, they average 2 to 2.5 vehicles per apartment.
right? Yeah, because the lady that bought our house in California called me the other day, and they're averaging way more than that in the apartments that are $3,000 for a two-bedroom apartment across the street. And they're having to do permitted parking, and it's becoming so, in such demand that that the tickets are paying for the person in the city to have a job. So that's just a concern. I'd really like to hear from the fire department on that. I mean, do you have concerns?
I think there are some concerns inherent to what this bill allows. I'll tell you that, probably from a regulatory and administrative standpoint, as long as the setbacks meet code and meet the current fire code, that would probably be our largest concern, is that we're not building these ADUs right up to the main structure and then thus closing the gap for fire spread. That would be the natural concern. Navigating some of our more narrow streets with compounded vehicles on the streets is always a concern, especially if we have to set up our ladder truck that requires the outriggers to come out, and we have to be cognizant of that. So to answer your question directly, yes, ma'am, there's definitely, I think, some public safety concerns when it comes to this, which it's probably irrelevant at this point since it passed, but I know that there was a lot of talk within the fire service in Colorado about this bill when it was running through, and these concerns were shared at that time.
Nice. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm sure PD has some concerns too. Yeah. Okay. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Duncan.
Thank you. Where you have the cities can regulate the height, do we have a height regulation as of yet?
I'm going to have you hold on for just a moment on that
Okay.
one because I will get to that.
Okay, thank you.
I had the same question too. Okay.
So the text that is in blue, there's a slide that will come up about some policy questions that will give staff some direction on,
Okay.
as we move forward with this, what to write into that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on this slide or anything so far? Any questions from anybody in the audience about anything so far? Please come down to the microphone and state your name for the record.
Since this affects utility, even service, even, Dan and I had a conversation not too long ago about how their system would be overtaxed if people had charging stations, 2 in a neighborhood, because the demand would cause overheating on the system. Is regional weighed in on any of this? Is there a concerted effort between a lot of different agencies? There is?
There was a lot of agencies that were,
That are
spoke out.
upset, but are they working
Right.
together?
Well, they will, they'll have to. Regional, if they go to add an ADU, Christie, I assume that the power structure has to be improved to reflect that.
Yeah, so same kind of a concept. If you want to hang tight, I will get to that onto another slide about the utility
okay, I
services. I'm
read
not
that.
quite done with the presentation,
Well, I was
but yes.
primarily interested in the utility and and whether regional was
So
getting
regional
involved in it.
building is going to permit the structure, period, end of story, to the regional building codes and any other, codes that are adopted through them. They didn't really weigh in on the type of permitting because it's a statutory requirement that they do this. It doesn't say that they're exempt from permitting. They would be subjected to the same permit review as if somebody was building a standard home.
But your statement says that you can't restrict the kind of housing that it can be, or the construction.
Correct.
So if you intermix types of dwellings, this can cause a big problem for the fire department. I'm just wondering where the regional comes in on all that.
They haven't mentioned anything. I haven't heard from any of the other local jurisdictions that have adopted these regulations of any issues from regional building.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next slide. So other items to consider as part of the statutory requirement is because it is a separate and distinct independent living facility, they would also receive a separate address. That would all be determined by enumerations, which is based out of Pikes Peak Regional Building Department on how that numerical sequence is assigned, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, A and B, or a 1, 2, 3, 1.5, or if they get a separate numerical designated house number for that ADU would be up to them to determine how that falls within the enumeration schematic of that, but it would be assigned a separate address. So my mail can't go to Mr. Strider's, house without having the same address. It would be my address and his address. There is a little bit of provisions for short-term rentals in the provisions. An ADU can be used as a short-term rental if the local government allows for this provision. So currently, the city does allow for short-term rentals within our community. It does not distinguish between primary units, room rentals, or in this case, accessory dwelling units. So if I were to have a residence, I could rent out the entire residence as a short-term rental. I could rent out 2 or 3 bedrooms in my home as a short-term rental, and each individual room is a short-term rental, or I could have an accessory dwelling unit that could then also be rented out as a short-term rental. So there's something in there for City Council to discuss as a policy question as we draft this. In terms of impact fees, the statute does allow and stipulate that any ADUs are required to pay any associated impact fees similar to any other single-family detached home. There is not a distinction made between this is an accessory dwelling unit versus a primary unit. Next slide. So here's some of the policy questions, which will address some of the council's questions that have already come up and audience questions. So the height limits, should the ADUs follow the maximum height of the applicable zone districts? So within the various zone districts that I mentioned at the beginning, those maximum heights range anywhere between 30 to 45 feet in height. It would be recommended that the ADUs have a maximum height of 12 feet if it's detached, and would follow the maximum height, building height of the zone district if it would be attached or integrated into the home. So if they were going to add a second story to the home, it would follow that same maximum height, building height of the zone district, or if they were to add an addition to their home, it would follow that same. So it would be recommended that we would write in a maximum height for detached only, since the building height is kind of already addressed for the primary units. The next item to consider is whether or not we want to regulate modular or mobile homes to be used as ADUs. The statute does have allowances in there and requirements that factory-built structures, as defined by the statute, must be allowed. However, it does allow for a little bit of direction from municipalities if we want to allow them as just factory-built or site-built, which would really be those two options, unless council wants to allow modular and mobile homes to be used as an ADU.
So there's a bill they're working on this year with modular homes. And they're working on it in terms of building a statewide regulation and using whatever is the greatest common thing. So you may be buying a house that you're going to put out here, but you're going to have the same snow requirements as they would have up in, say, Estes Park or whatever the ski resorts are up there. They're picking the greatest need for the state, and they're going to make those be statewide mandates. Regional building is opposed to it because it does not make housing any more affordable. The analogy that was used was they want to set a statewide standard for pickup trucks we purchase. City of Fountain says we want white trucks. County says we want red trucks. Another city says we want leather seats. Another city says we require them to be all have this or that. So instead, in the effort to buy together to make a cheaper truck, in the long run, you're making a more expensive truck because everybody has to have their one standard of what they want. And they're doing that with modular homes now, and I just think it's going to add another layer to this problem we're dealing with right now that we won't even know what that is till this bill passes or not. So, okay. So, you guys want to keep going, or want to discuss these policy quick? Okay.
Couple more. All right, next slide. The statute, again, does require municipalities to allow as by right ADUs between 500 and 750 square feet. However, we can limit the maximum size limitation of it. So some other jurisdictions within the state have written regulations for the floor area of the accessory dwelling unit cannot exceed 50% of the gross floor area of the primary unit, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is more restrictive. The intent behind that purpose is that the ADUs are to be supplemental and accessory subordinate to the primary, so it's not to have two full-size dwelling units on the home. That verbiage would always allow for 500 to 750 square feet ADUs, as long as the gross floor area of the ADU doesn't exceed that primary unit. Along with that, you would also write in the maximum footprint of a detached ADU, which would be 1,000 square feet, and that footprint would include any of the other spaces as part of the ADU, so whether you added a garage, a carport, a porch, and a deck. And the intent behind that is so that somebody is not building a 5,000 square foot detached unit and putting in 1,000 square feet of living space and making the intent that now you have a 5,000 square foot building be your ADU, but in reality, your ADU is just that living space. So adding those limitations of the ADU would protect that from having, like as I said, the really large garages and effectively having a completely separate second unit on the property. So some of this verbiage is from Wheat Ridge. Longmont has followed something very similar. There's another L community as well. So those are some of the recommendations on size limitations. But again, that is at discretion of City Council. Next slide. The statutes also stipulate that ADUs would need to be served by adequate facilities for the water supply, sewage, solid waste, electrical, and fire protection prior to the issuance of the building, and that the applicant for an ADU would need to confirm that service availability by having a written documentation by the water or sewer, electrical, and fire protection that they are able to serve that. Whether that is by a separate meter or not, it would be recommended that ADUs have a separate water and electric meter, again, because they are completely separate and independent units from each other. They would be completely distinct. You don't want to get into a situation where the tenants in the primary unit receive the utility bill and it's daisy chained, meaning that they share all of the same services, and if that tenant doesn't pay the bill, now your second tenant is without utility services. That's not a hypothetical situation. That is situations that we deal with frequently. When it comes to units that are rented out, a good example is a couple of years ago, the property just east of City Hall has a 1960 house on it and then a 1938 accessory structure that had been converted to living space decades ago. And the tenant received one bill, didn't pay it, and now both tenants were without utilities. And so that is a very real life situation that we deal with currently in our community. Next slide. Oh, on here is also the short-term rentals. So it does allow whether or not City Council wants to restrict the ADUs from being used as a short-term rental. Staff doesn't really have any kind of a recommendation on this. This is really going to be a policy discretionary call by City Council if they want to add additional language into a forthcoming ordinance to either include or exclude ADUs from short-term rentals, or if we want to continue having short-term rentals at all in our community. That is entirely up to Council's discretion. Are there questions on this slide before I move on?
Councilmember Geek?
Does each meter require a separate water tap?
It would, yes.
And that should limit it.
And so keep in mind that the City of Fountain is served by more than one water provider. So the City of Fountain does provide water service to a large amount of area within the city. And as the council is aware, we do have no taps available for water availability. But we also have areas within our community that are served by both Widefield and or Security Water. So they would have to work with that individual water district and those regulations for service being provided that way as well. Okay, next slide. So moving forward, based upon the discussion and feedback that's received tonight, staff will be drafting the ordinance that would meet all of the statutory requirements, would incorporate any of the policy questions that we discussed, and then would also be reviewing any existing conflicts within the code that would conflict with the regulatory requirements of the ADU. So for an example, we have the allowance of tiny homes within the LLR and RA zone district that has a size limitation tied to that would not meet the intent of ADUs. So based upon that, the adoption of this state bill and the requirement to add that in, we would probably repeal that entire section of our code because it's no longer applicable, because it would fall under the ADU sections. And since ADUs would be allowed everywhere and the tiny homes are only allowed within 2 zone districts, it didn't make sense to have 2 conflicting sections. And then the ordinance would go before our first and second reading, which would all occur before the June 30th of 2025 implementation date. And I know that is a whole lot of information. A lot of it is limiting in terms of what the state says municipalities basically can't regulate. It does have some areas where we can write some regulations into ordinances, and so those are what those policy questions are. So I'm going to ask IT to go back to those policy question slides so we can kind of go through those and have some discussion as well.
Okay. So I actually approached Senator Snyder about running a late bill to add an extension to the, like we did with the ADA websites where we had an extra year. He didn't want to pick up a late bill, but he's done some work with the actual author of this bill, and they actually went through to the Department of DOLA that would be enforcing this. Now, I don't have anything in writing because I've told him I need it in writing. But what I've been told verbally is as long as we can show by June 25th that we're making progress, if we don't have this ordinance in place that, and the second reading done and everything, that we won't be fined or restricted. However, if we can't pull that for years and years and years, right? So we're waiting to get that in writing. So we'll see if that gives us a little bit of relief. Because the amount of stuff coming down from the states to home rural municipalities is just getting ridiculous, and it's getting worse this year, and I think it's going to be worse next year. So we have several things that you need us to consider, but we don't necessarily have to throw them all out tonight, right? You're just kind of looking for some direction, not only from us, but from the citizens in the community. And, because this is just a discussion item. So, now I know one community has said they are going to restrict ADUs to short-term rentals as long as the owner occupies the other part of it, so that both of the units aren't rentals, Is that something you can require? Is that the main residential area has to be owner occupied? I'm just asking. So.
Mayor Thompson, when we're talking about restricting whether or not an ADU can be used as a short-term rental,
Right.
Yes, you can add that requirement that the only properties that have the property owner in the primary residence then can use the ADU as a short-term rental. But you cannot you can't otherwise require that the primary be occupied by the property owner. So only in terms of restricting the ADU as being a short-term rental. Alternatively, yes, I guess you could say the opposite, say that the primary home can be used as a short-term rental only if the property owner is in the ADU, if that makes sense.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you. Okay. When you talked about restricting height, because I think Councilmember Duncan kind of had a question there too, is that only on the ADU if they build it to be a separate unit? Or can you restrict the height if they decide they want to go up on their primary unit?
It doesn't distinguish between whether it's an attached or detached unit. It may be difficult to say if I wanted to build a second story to my home and just add additional living space, that it's subjected to this height limitation, but if I was adding an ADU, it has a different height limitation. It's certainly something council can do, but it kind of muddies the water a little bit. When the primary house can already be built to that maximum height. A lot of it really, the height limitations really kind of comes into some of those detached units where you may not want another 30 to 40 foot structure in the yard. But again, that's a council discussion.
Yeah, some of the frustrations in a lot of the conversations that were going around with this bill, people were like, I bought my house in a certain height, height in the neighborhood, and now all of a sudden I have somebody who's put an additional floor on their home, and they're using the additional floor as a short-term rental, so now I have all these people that I don't know who they are in and out of my neighborhood, and being able to, see anything that we're doing, and my kids playing in the backyard, and, they're just really concerned about the quality of life for the people who were there first, so to say, or the neighborhood that they were expecting to live in. So that's why I think the height is a big question for a lot of people. Councilmember Rick.
So with regards to the ADUs, and we're going to have to need separate water taps and separate water meters. We are rapidly running out of taps available to sell.
Just one correction, we're out of them.
We're out of them?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're out of taps and somebody comes in and says, well, the state says you have to let me build an ADU, how does that work?
Well, the state bill also stipulates that the water provider has to provide a letter that says that they can adequately provide service to that, and if the city in this instance doesn't have any taps to give, we wouldn't be able to provide a letter.
Okay. I definitely, this is me speaking for me, I do not want daisy-chained water meters or electric meters. I do not want to go there. I've seen that in other places, and it does not work. And if we're out of water taps, so be it. But I don't want to see daisy change or water or electric, please, or gas, for that matter. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Estes?
I agree with Councilmember Rick on the daisy chaining. And for the most of Fountain, we have we don't have the water, but we do have areas that are serviced by other water. So therefore, we still have to address this
Correct.
regulation.
That's correct.
Hang on a second. Wait, just a second, Daryl. Hang on just a second. Okay. All righty. Yeah, I agree. So we have to address, yeah. And then maybe look at short-term rentals at the same time, too. Councilmember Hersberg, did you have anything?
I do. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead.
Right. I wanted to know, is there a limit to the number of ADUs that's allowed on a property? So say, for example, someone refurbishes their basement and then does an external standalone one. Are they able to do things like that?
So the Senate or the House bill stipulates that you are allowed one and one only ADU.
Okay, perfect. And then just to clarify, while it's a separate living unit, it's still deeded by one deed, right? So if the property sold, the whole property would sell. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. Unless the property or property owner went through the subdivision process to divide that property into separate lots, the ADU would be transferred or sold with the primary unit.
Okay, so then does this bill allow for the subdividing as an option? Because then it wouldn't be an ADU, right? It would be its own property. Can you clarify that a little bit?
So the House bill doesn't touch on the subdivision. That would follow the governmental's regulations that are in place, either through state statute or the home rule municipalities regulations. It would follow that whole process. So it may start as an ADU, and then 10 years from now, whomever owns it may say, I don't want to do this anymore, and could subdivide that if it meets all of the regulations.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
I have a bone to throw in there.
Okay, Councilmember Estes?
So we can have one ADU.
Correct.
So what if at my house, I'm having the Airbnb or whatever, I'm renting out rooms, and I decided, I'll also build an ADU. Can I still rent out the rooms in my house? Just to throw some conflict in here let's just kill the parking altogether?
Under current regulations, yes.
And so the ADU, could they rent out different rooms, or is that one unit?
Again, under the current regulations, yes. It could be however it is. So it does allow, as I mentioned, some provisions that it could be used as a short-term rental if that's what council's direction is. We could regulate that the ADU cannot be used as a short-term rental. We could eliminate short-term rentals entirely in the city. We could, as City Attorney Strider mentioned, do a little bit of finagling in terms of the occupancy of an owner in the ADU and that not be used as the short-term rental, but the primary unit could. It gets gray and messy.
I can't say what went through my mind, so Councilmember Rick.
So we can say you can't daisy chain meters. Does that apply to security water, security electric, wide field water, et cetera, or is that only for fountain utilities?
It would only be fountain utilities, and it would be written into either the utility code or an internal city policy. For the purposes of the House bill and the statute requirements, it would follow the verbiage that stipulates, if you can go back, actually, I'll just read it from my slide. That stipulates that the ADUs shall be served by adequate facilities for potable water supply, sewage disposal, solid waste disposal, electrical supply, and fire protection prior to issuance of a building permit for the ADU. An applicant shall provide written confirmation from the service provider for availability of water, wastewater, and whether a separate meter or meter is required. So the city of Fountain would write a letter that says yes or no, we can and can't provide water and wastewater to you, not wastewater, but water to you, and what those stipulations are, that it does or does not require a separate meter, but the city doesn't have any jurisdictional authority over the security water or sanitation district.
I'm sorry, I was listening.
It's hard to absorb.
And at the end, you said whether or not a separate meter is required.
Correct. So if
If
somebody
it's,
came
if it's,
before the city of Fountain and said, I want to build an ADU, they would go to Fountain Utilities. Fountain Utilities would provide a letter that says, do we have availability? Yes or no. And if it's a yes, does it require a separate meter or can it be daisy chained? So any of that policy direction would be written into the utility code and/or the internal city policy of how we would provide that. But we can't regulate that separate meters be provided for the security water sanitation.
in our zoning, we can't put that in the zoning ordinance?
No, because we can't require a separate quasi-governmental entity such as the Fountain Sanitation District, Security Water, Widefield Water, to change their regulations to meet the city's codes, because they have their own governing board and policies and directions.
Okay.
Directives.
Bear
One
in
thing,
mind,
Chris,
this
just-
was passed under affordable housing, and
Yeah.
there is nothing in the bill that says they have to be affordable.
Correct.
They can
One
charge
thing,
whatever they
Mr.
want.
Strider just mentioned, that's an interesting idea, but we like it. We'll touch base with them through utilities as possibly doing an IGA to keep some consistency and see the interest level with Widefield as well as security and see if that's a possibility, if they're interested in doing the same.
Yeah, I would ask that our utility department reach out and see if we can come to an IGA. I would like to see consistency within the city limits of Fountain. I'm not trying to take away security water or Widefield Water's authority to manage their department. I just would like to see consistency within the city. I don't want somebody going, well, I can have an ADU because I live in Widefield Water, but you can't have an ADU because you live in Fountain Water. That's not going to sit very well. And if Dan wants somebody from the council to go with him, I would be happy to go, if that's allowed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I went up, I had been sworn in less than 24 hours, and I had to go up to CSU, to their utility, so. And that was an interesting conversation. I think one of the other concerns that was expressed when this bill was being run was, and the reason I touched on owner-occupied one of the units was someone coming in and purchasing an older unit, and tearing it down and putting two separate two separate ones on the property because, so if we're going to require the second tap, I think that would help, separate taps, that would help with that. I did ask Mr. Couch to wait a minute, so Mr. Couch, did you have something? Come on down. Oh, there you go.
Goes back to my question about regional, because things like you were talking about not daisy chaining utility, if you use the type of unit where you're extending onto an additional, to a residence already, there's national code about putting in separate service unless there's a need because of different voltage, different phase. So if it's all under one, you get one service to the house, you could have disconnects going to different parts of that. But if it's a separate structure, that's a different story, but not if it's the same structure. And then even on the structures, you're talking about making requirements for instance, if it had a garage, that would be added onto the ADU space. So what if you had a detached garage and then you put on, somebody goes out and builds a detached garage and then they say, okay, now I want to build the ADU on top of it. The attached garage would not be counted as part of that because it would already be a legal building. So then what do you do in a case like that? And another thought, I know I'm just throwing extra gasoline on the fire, but I've got, my property is consisted of 2 legal lots. So I could, according to this, I could build 3 more houses. And my neighbor's got multiple lots on their property because they platted it a long time ago. I don't even know where to begin.
And we're already seeing, even prior to this bill, we're already seeing requests come in from investors or rentals.
Sure.
Where just over here off of Missouri or Iowa, I don't remember what it is, they've got a home and then they've got a separate smaller lot where they want to build a duplex on it. So we will see more and more investors come in, buy up.
I've already been approached by somebody that said, hey, you've got another lot that you're not built on at all. And I kept it separate because a long time ago, I thought, well, if anything happens, my wife will have a separate paid-off lot she can sell if she needs to.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a separate legal lot, so, I mean, it would be entitled to 2 more houses plus another ADU on my place.
Investors will maximize every square foot that they have to make more money, so we will see it coming.
I mean, I just see scenarios running out to eternity of somebody's always going to try and figure out how to beat the system, so. I don't even know how you write an ordinance like that.
You never can. You can never, as Todd says, you can never out-engineer people. So we can always do the obvious what-ifs and always can come back and amend within the statute, confines of the statute and what we're allowed to do.
Okay, well, that was my reason, my asking earlier about regional was because just like the electric, they're saying you can't run separate services. So now you're going back to the utility and saying, that service lateral that goes to my house, well, I'm going to add 100 amps to it. That's not how they're designed. So then the utility companies, I just see a lot
Our
of issues.
utilities folks are having some really interesting conversations back and forth about exactly what you're.
Well, I've already been
bringing up.
having conversations with Dan because they've been doing tests because they realized that their system could collapse if 2 people with full charging stations went into the same neighborhood.
Yeah, it's doesn't surprise any of us. I think that the state putting this down didn't think of any of these type of scenarios through. Just dumped it down here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your good questions. Did you have anything? You're just listening? Okay. Didn't want to exclude you if you wanted to ask a question. Okay, any other council members?
I did, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So I just got a bit confused. So if I have a home with a finished basement, which I decide to turn into an ADU, and it already has utility, in order for it to be the ADU, it's got to have its own utility installed. Is my understanding that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
We can require a separate meter. So if I have a shed in my back, I think, Jennifer, I'm going to repeat your question because it's a little hard to hear. Your question was, if you have a shed in your backyard and you already have power to it because you run your tools in it, would you be required, if you turn that into an ADU, to get a separate meter to it? Is that your question?
Yeah, a shed, a basement, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, yes, you would, if we pass it that way, yes. Can we require them, because I know one of our neighboring cities did this, that they only can be in the backyard and not in the front yard? Because if a place has a very, can we do it and get sued? Because I'm really not caring at this point.
Madam Mayor, you can do most anything and get sued.
That's pretty much true. Let me tell you.
That's a good answer.
One of the kids screamed about that in the backyard, that their brother was breathing on him. I remember that, so.
The statute is, I think, reads that would be a illegal restriction on the construction of the ADU. It would still have to comply with setbacks and everything like that, but, yeah. As far as trying to mandate some sort of aesthetic uniformity or anything like that, we wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
Chris, you need to turn on your microphone,
Chris, can you
please.
turn your mic on, please?
We have Samuel Fortune from the public. Are people forgetting what ADUs were for to begin with?
I don't think we're forgetting. I think we're just trying to really figure out, get our heads around this. When you have something come down from the state and it has such potential problems for your city in terms, I worry about public safety. We're increasing the density of a location, and we can't control the density because we can't control how many people live in a house. And so you're going to be collecting essentially the same property taxes on it, but being expected to provide more and more services as time goes on. And those services just keep exploding in the cost of what they are. Okay, gosh. We're not giving you much direction because I think we're just all pretty much overwhelmed, and I know that's what you need tonight, but I'm not sure anybody's comfortable going down there tonight. But do we have another question online? I heard the beep. Is that a hand going up?
According to online, it would be no different than if an Asian family member moved in.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that thought. Thank you. Okay. Does anybody have anything? We've got the Councilmember Rick and Councilmember Estes want to, I'm hearing you say separate meters for water and electricity.
No, I think we have to.
And I think I'm hearing also that we want the guidelines for the entire city to be the same and not just our utility zone. And I understand we were going to have to work on an IGA to do that with them. I think that can be figured out pretty quickly. If they're agreeable. I understand that. No, but I've heard there are water restrictions too, but I'm not going to speak for another entity publicly. So we've heard that. Does everybody agree with that?
Christie, what else do you need from us?
If you wouldn't mind, we can go through the 3 slides that have policy
Yeah,
questions, and
okay.
I can have some direction at
Okay.
that point. So the first one would be the height limits of, should the ADUs, detached ADUs have a maximum height, and if so, what would it be? And if we want to have the attached or integrated or internal units, do we want to have a separate building height for those, or do we want to follow the zone district height?
Okay.
My,
What's the height of an average one-story home?
18 to 20 feet, depending on the pitch of the roof.
Okay.
yeah, I would be amenable to average height of a single-family home would be the one-level home, ranch type, whatever that restriction is, I think would be applicable to the ADU. And then for the second, if it's an attached, then it's whatever the maximum is to the zone. I don't want to try and go in and change all the
Well, yeah, my feeling in general is this is the first step, this is the first attempt at this. I feel that we make it as restrictive as possible, and you can always revisit it, and you can change it and expand it.
Okay.
But if you, that's just my feeling, right, just speaking for myself. But if you make it too permissible and then try to pull it back because it doesn't work, that's harder to do than. Okay, we'll get to the comments online in just a minute. I'll ask you for them. Okay. All right, that's just my personal feeling. It's just to make it as restrictive as possible for the first year, just to have to comply with the law.
So when staff made a recommendation of a height of 12 feet, that would be a single story with a pitched roof, as height is measured from the highest point to the average finished grade. So that's approximately on a smaller unit. So if you're going to do a shed of some sort, that's the typical height, unless you are going into a much larger size shed where you have more of the rafters and the attic space and loft areas.
I'm okay with the staff recommendations.
Councilmember
Yeah,
Duncan?
staff recommendations.
Okay. We're only talking the height right now.
Just the
on
height.
it. That's going to make it a little bit shorter than that, like you said, the 18 to 20 feet, a little bit smaller. So, okay, all right. Let's hear from Councilmember Hertzberg.
Yes, thank you. I'm fine with staff recommendation.
Okay, one down.
Okay, the next one would be whether or not we want to regulate modular or mobile homes to be used as ADUs. Keep in mind that the statute already allows for factory-built structures to be permitted. So the recommendation was we would follow that stipulation, that it can be factory-built as defined by the statute, or could be a site-built construction.
So mobile homes is obviously what it is, but modular home, they bring it in pieces, right? Okay. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's heard what she said. She's just not sure how you can even get it back into some of those places, but they would crane it in, I'm sure, if they could figure out a way to do it. So this would be a mobile home placed on a potentially stick-built lot in the front or the backyard? If we allowed mobile homes to be used as ADUs, Christie? She's looking something up.
Getting hit up by multiple questions at once.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's my fault, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry? Just give him a minute.
So a little bit of background legal research here. Per Colorado Revised Statute 2432-3302, there is a definition of factory-built residential structure, which clearest interpretation is we could, from a legal standpoint, equates to modular housing. It's a single-family, duplex, or multifamily housing substantially or entirely manufactured in a factory, moved on site in substantial component parts, placed on a permanent foundation, not self-propelled, which meet or exceed on an equivalent engineering basis, standards established by the city's building code. And they bear an insignia label as factory-built unit certification, typically found under the kitchen sink. So it does, when we're talking about modular homes here in regard to the statute, that's what we'd be looking at. That's what we could regulate.
So if we don't regulate a modular home or a mobile home, and they could put one in Deetra's neighbor's front yard, right? Because her HOA can't stop it. Is that correct?
Yes.
There's just certain things I know, but I want to have the public hear them, right? Because I think they need to understand what we're not trying to restrict private property rights, but we have to look at the overall good of the whole community and the public safety of the whole community. Okay. I was just using that as an example because I know you live in an HOA, so. All right. So you need to give you some direction for that. The state requires allowance defined by statute. So we can say that we're not going to allow a modular or mobile home to be used as ADU. What are some thoughts on council members from that?
I think what Christie is asking is, because it says or, ADUs are allowed as factory-built as defined in the statute, or site-built by construction only. Are you asking for either or are you asking for both?
It would probably be both, because if somebody did not want to have a factory-built ADU and they wanted to frame it out themselves, site-built, buy the 2x4s, buy all the brackets and do it themselves, it would allow for that construction if so allowed. Or we could restrict it to the point of where it can only be factory-built as defined by the statute.
I say we restrict it to what the statute says, and then if somebody complains, tell them to take it up with the state.
Can you clarify that a little bit clearer?
Okay.
Because this is going to be people watching online.
What I understood her to say was we can restrict it to factory-built by statute, or we can allow them to come in and build a frame, put down a foundation, build a building.
Right.
I say we go with what the statute says, and if somebody doesn't like it, they can take it up with the state.
I did just want to make sure that council and the public were clear on the idea of a factory-built residential structure as opposed to a modular home. We discussed this a little bit in our research into the statute and deep dive. And realistically, if you're comparing a modular home to a manufactured home as defined by the statute, excuse me, or I'm sorry, a factory-built structure is defined, I think the average person would probably prefer the modular home as far as aesthetically. So while the state requires allowance for factory-built structures, if you're restricting it to only factory-built structures, you may be restricting it to only aesthetically less pleasing structures, whereas somebody could frame out something that looks a lot better.
Well,
But that's just, again, informational.
I understand, but as the mayor said, I would rather go with more restrictive and loosen it up later than start loose and try and tighten up.
Okay, a factory-built home, right? A factory, I'm sorry, I need a where's the picture? This is a picture of a modular, this is a picture of a factory-built, this is a picture of a mobile, you know what I'm saying?
I don't
Because
think, I'm sorry. Mayor.
That's literally, it gets very confusing, and I know you guys deal with these words all day long, but we don't, and the average citizen doesn't. So when I think of a factory-built home, I think of something that you see the two pieces going down the freeway, saran wrapped or whatever you call it, and then they get them to the site and they put them together, kind of like the one we have at the Prayer Garden, that it's not on wheels like a mobile home was. And some of them look very, very nice. They look like a stick-built home. Is that what you're calling a factory-built home?
I think there's a great deal of variance that falls under the definition of factory-built homes. So yes, that is possible. It is defined as a manufactured home, including any closed panel system constructed to the building codes adopted by the board and designed to be installed on a permanent foundation, except for, and then it describes basically modular homes and mobile homes. So where we're talking about a factory-built residential structure, there is room for interpretation as to the manufacturer. It could be what you're describing, commonly referred to as a double wide, but it could be something else as well, falling within that definition. Whereas the modular home is a little closer to a very set standard that's nationally accepted.
When you say a double wide, my brain went to a mobile home, because you have the single wide, right? And then you have the double wide, but they're still not on the same kind of foundation as a factory-built home is put on, correct?
They could be.
They could be.
Yeah.
Everybody clear as mud? Councilmember Geek.
I'm just wondering, can we say modular home or site-built construction only?
The statute does require allowance for the factory-built structures, so.
But if we restrict the size to 500 square feet, how many factory or,
750,
no, it said 500 somewhere.
500 to 750.
Has to be
Oh,
between
500
5
To
and
allow
7.
them
just
between
wanna go for
5 and
500.
750.
Okay, how many are you going to get of, I mean, I shouldn't say it because somebody's building it somewhere, I'm sure. But, and we can't do anything about the aesthetic, making sure it matches the neighborhood or anything else. I'm not comfortable with mobile homes. Can I?
the city can restrict or prohibit use of mobile homes or modular homes as an ADU.
Okay.
So effectively, that means that if it's, when they're talking mobile, think of the most literal definition of mobile that you can imagine as far as having wheels on it, being either self-propelled or having some sort of attachment that it could be towed. But it would be something that literally has to be movable.
You can move again.
It's not going to be set up on a permanent foundation or designed to be installed on a permanent foundation. I think if you think of some of the, not mobile home parks, but more senior living communities that are in some areas of the city, they have examples of a double wide, for lack of a better term, on a permanent foundation. And that would fall under the definition of the manufactured home.
So could we just say it has to be on a permanent foundation? Would that solve some of it? No?
Because you can place almost anything on a permanent foundation. So we tried to still meet the letter of the statute by allowing the factory built, but still giving the discretion if somebody wanted to build it themselves.
Can we say no cargo containers?
No? Because you can't regulate the aesthetic design.
Okay. Okay, can we go to another question? Because I
Sure.
think we're really spiraling on this question and getting stuck
Sure.
on it. So
So-
let's go back to one of the other questions.
All right, next slide. The limitation of the size of the ADU. By law, we have to allow ADUs that are between 500 and 750 square feet, but we can limit the maximum size of an ADU. So as recommended would be that it cannot exceed 50% of the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit or 1,000 square feet, whichever is more restrictive. So if you have a 2,000 square foot home, well, that's a bad example. A 3,000 square foot home, it could be 1,500 or 1,000 square feet, whichever is more restrictive. And so in this case, it would be 1,000 square feet. But say you live in a home that is 800 square feet, then your ADU could go up to 1,000 square feet. Right?
So the ADU can be bigger than the primary home?
I'm sorry, what?
Then the ADU could conceivably be larger than the primary home?
It could.
Can we restrict that? That the ADU cannot be larger than the primary home?
We're looking.
Huh?
I said he's looking into the
Okay.
statute.
So it says we have to allow 500 to 750 square feet, but your recommendation is to allow larger.
Up to 1,000 square feet. So if you were going to do an ADU, this would allow a typical, say, an apartment, 2-bedroom is anywhere between 700 to 900 square feet. Or in this instance, 1,000 square feet could be a 25 by 40 building size.
So nothing in the statute prevents the city from allowing the construction or conversion of an ADU that is smaller than 500 square feet or greater than 800 square feet, or restricting the size of an ADU so that it is no larger than the size of the principal dwelling unit on the same lot as the ADU. So you would be able to say you cannot have an ADU that is bigger than the principal dwelling.
That's what I thought, okay.
So keep in mind, if you have a large home, 3, 4, 5,000 square feet, your ADU could almost match that same size,
Unless we restrict it.
unless you put a maximum square footage allowance.
Okay. Councilmember Rick?
What's going to be the impact if we change that 1,000 square feet to 750?
Nothing, you can say the maximum is 750 square feet.
Again, going back to what you were saying, let's make it restrictive and stay with the 750 since that's what the statute says. so I'm being restricted as possible because I'm.
That's why you
ticked
tape it.
off.
That's why you tape it. Okay. Was any thought given, this is almost a rhetorical question, I understand that. Was any thought given to increasing the, and Christy, make sure I use the right word, was any thought given to, we're going to be increasing the
Impervious.
impervious surface and creating flooding issues in our neighborhoods with the amount of rainwater that's going to be coming off these now hard surfaces as compared to it might have been a lawn before? I know it's a rhetorical question.
We got to ask the state that. That's,
So under the regulations, yes, you would be adding impervious coverage. If it's a detached structure, it would still fall under the maximum impervious coverage of that zone district, which could be anywhere between 25 to 50% of the lot or more, depending on the zone district.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern. We already have streets, we're already, okay. I tend to agree with Councilmember Rick, not because of a basketball game, but we do agree once in a while, right? I just have so many concerns, quality of life, public safety, water drainage, over, and I know people are going to be upset no matter which way you do. We have to allow it. That isn't an option anymore. I'd like to hear from what other council members think, just in general, of what your kind of overall thoughts are in working through this process. Are you for restricting it? Or are you for making it as wide as you can and then cross our fingers and hope we don't have problems? Or where are kind of your thoughts in general? I know we've heard from Gordon and myself, so. Councilmember Geek?
I think it needs to be as restrictive as we can possibly make it. I don't want,
Can you speak into your mic?
I'm thinking about my neighborhood, the neighborhoods around us. I don't want to see an extra house the size of the primary residence on every property.
Councilmember Estes?
I agree. I mean, I live in a small house already. It's the 1,000 square feet. So thinking of that in my backyard, I'm like, there is no backyard. So I am agreeing with the more restrictive. So.
Councilmember Duncan?
I'd like to go with the recommendation from the staff and make it 750 square feet.
Just the whole thing in general, though, not just all the,
Right.
you make it as restrictive as, is that what you're saying?
I wanted to go to 750 square feet.
Well, I understand that one particular thing, but I'm talking about all the thoughts of just ADUs and guidelines in general. So, Councilmember Hersberg?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think my mindset is not so much more restrictive as my mindset is I would like to preserve as many of our ordinances that we are able to preserve. So I was a little bit confused with the impervious surface question. So my understanding was those regulations that we've set as a city stay in place. So if someone wants to put a detached unit out and having that space would put them outside the allowable coverage for that area, then they would not be allowed to do so. Am I understanding what you said correctly?
Yes, so the zone district impervious coverage would remain. So whether they had an ADU or no ADU, if they wanted to build a detached garage in their backyard, they would still be held to that limitation. Right now, they're talking about the size of the ADU unit itself, of generally limiting the maximum size to the 750 square feet, which would be compliant with the statute.
Yes, I would be in favor of being compliant with the statute. I think this is confusing enough as it is. So I want to preserve what our policies are in as much as we're able to do so without muddying the water so much that no one can understand it.
So I think there's just a balance we have to find there.
Okay, so we're hearing 750 maximum square feet for now? I think that's what we're hearing. What's the next one? Separate water meters, separate electric?
Just a quick point of clarification on the ADU size, it would apply to both internal attached or detached, correct? Okay. So then the next item would be the separate water meters. The recommendation would be that they have a separate water and electric meter. This would address the city's concerns, and we can have discussions with the possibility of an IGA with the other water providers within the city, if they are open to that. I don't know if we can require them, though, to do that. So we can explore the IGA further, see if they are palatable to that idea. But for the sake of our own water service areas, we could require internally through the utility code to have a separate water and electric meter.
Okay, I'm going to go down the row. Councilmember Duncan, separate water and electric meters?
Yes.
Estes? Geek? Yes. Rick, thumbs up. Jennifer? Hersberg, Councilmember Hersberg?
Yes.
Okay.
And that would be written through the utility code, just as a clarification,
Yes.
so we can't regulate that through everybody else, but we will work on the backside through the IGA.
Okay.
The next question would be whether or not City Council wants to restrict ADUs from being used as a short-term rental. Staff doesn't have a recommendation on this. This is entirely up to City Council and their discretionary powers of regulations on short-term
How do we do that? How do we regulate that? They can rent it long-term, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but not short-term. And how is short-term defined?
Yeah, that's my question is, what is a
I didn't bring
short-term
my whole
rental
book with
definition?
me. I'm not sure we have a definition of a short term. At least that's not popping out right now at me.
Christie, would it be similar to the lodger's tax, short-term kind of definition? I think it's like 30 days.
I think you were asking about a lodger's tax, because we're having a little bit of trouble hearing. It's a little muffled. We don't have a lodger's tax. We'd have to pass a lodger's tax, and then they would have to register with a business license and.
No, I understand we don't have a lodger's tax. I was asking if the definition of short-term rental would be the same as what's used in a lodger's tax.
Okay, I get what you're saying. She's
Which
asking.
is like 30 days.
Right. She's asking if the definition of short-term rental would be the same as if you had a lodger's tax, that definition.
So according to Todd's Wikipedia Siri,
Wikipedia,
whatever he used here,
yeah.
says it's typically short rentals, rented for short periods of time, usually seen as an alternative to hotels. Could be less than 30 days, generally is what we've seen.
Well, I think we've heard a lot of frustration from our citizens in the community in general over Airbnbs and short-term rentals and some of the issues that go there. However, I struggle
We don't
with-
have a definition of short-term rentals. It's on my list.
Okay, well, maybe that needs to be done before we decide.
That's fine.
Because I'm leaning towards, if they're going to use it for short-term rental, then the owner has to live in the primary unit, but I want to know the definition of short-term rental. But,
Just for council's consideration, there is no statewide definition.
there isn't.
No.
Interesting. Oh, can you turn your mic?
The site I went to said Colorado Springs has 30 days or less as short term.
Okay. Oh, come on down. And state your name for the record and push the middle button there.
Hello, my name is Maria Peterson. I don't live in the city of Fountain, but everything you do affects me because I live 1 block from the border. And just listening, I would ask is that you really consider, I know you're talking about the city and you want to leave it where it's, you know, you don't want to see things change and stuff, but things are changing. And some of us are not going to be.
Oh, hang on just a second. Your mic for some reason went off. Okay, there you go.
Some of us are not going to be here in the next 20 years. I just turned 70 myself. And you have to look at a bigger picture. Right now, our economy is struggling. Our people are struggling. People are losing their jobs big time. And families are looking for every avenue to try to make it. Even if they have to, I know someone that just moved someone into a room in their home. They really would prefer them not to be in their home if they wish they had something else in the backyard or something like that. But families are starting to move back in together. And it's going to be a lot of that. So I just ask that you look at the whole picture and not just in the past and how long you've been here, because you're not going to be here all that much longer. And what we really need to do is, you know, I would ask that you encourage some of the younger generation to be more a part of this, because you need some of their voices and their concerns as well. And I'm not just saying that you guys are old, you know, but we are older and we're not thinking the same. So I just ask, whatever it is you decide, that you just look at the bigger picture. You know, I know what you're saying about your city, but your city is not the same that it was 20, 35 years ago when I got here. In fact, it has grown, but you have a lot of young people here too. And it's not enough around here for kids as it is. So surely just consider that, or maybe, you know, maybe you want to talk to some younger people or some people that's out here in the community. And I know that most of them don't want to come out and do anything because they're working. They're working and they're taking care of their children, because I did that. And I was not very involved when I was doing that. But that was because I just didn't have the time. And these people don't either. That's why some of them don't vote, which is very sad. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I just want to let you know, this is not in any way if they move somebody in the house. This is only if they're trying to, you know, set it up as a separate rental, separate thing. So, yeah, okay. Yeah. I understand, yeah. Okay. So we don't have a definition for short-term rental. I think we need that before we can answer this question, so maybe that can be brought, some recommendations or thoughts brought back the next meeting. I don't think we're going to get through this tonight. I think we're going to have a lot of input from citizens, hopefully, before the next meeting. Do you have enough recommendations to move forward with what you have?
Yes, I didn't know if you guys wanted to touch base again on the modular mobile homes or.
I think we just really need to absorb that and.
Okay.
And bring us some pictures next time. Get basic, get us some pictures. We did have some comments and questions online. They were made public, so I think we do need to go ahead and read those into the record.
Sure. These comments were from Samuel Fortune. It would be no different than if an aging family member moved in. Then how do you all justify some of the metal garages that have been going up? Has the ever ruled on this Supreme Court? What about tiny homes? Those are trailers.
Okay,
That was all.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right? That's the only comments? Okay. I can't tell you enough, if you've heard this tonight, or you can go through and read the slides, contact us, send us emails, because obviously you can see we're struggling with this, and to just try to figure out what's best for the community overall, and you can't do that if you don't have input. So is everybody comfortable with moving on? Okay? Comfortable with moving on? Okay. Alrighty, okay. That takes us on to item 10, City Council Agenda Request. Does anybody have an agenda request tonight? Councilmember Hertzberg?
Nothing from you, Mayor.
Okay, and that takes us on to announcement of an executive session. There is no executive session tonight.
No, ma'am.
All right, and so this meeting is adjourned.